All right, boys and girls. How's everybody doing today? Everybody good? All right, I'm glad. I heard a few goods out there. I'm so glad to see you here. If you're visiting, thanks for coming. We're always tickled pink when visitors come our way, and we just hope you're encouraged by your time with us and want to come back when you can. So, we are continuing, of course. If you've been with us on a regular basis, you know that what we're doing here in the auditorium on Sunday morning is we're doing archaeology and the life of Christ. And we are just going to some of the places. We've kind of been following Jesus' life. We started in Nazareth, the announcement of his birth. And we went, of course, down to Bethlehem. Then we went up to the area of the Galilee where he made his home base for his ministry in Capernaum. We looked at some of the sites up there and some of the archaeological findings that are connected with his life. And so we have been going to the various spots and discussing those great finds that relate to his life and ministry. You know, it's just a reminder. And what this is all about is it's a reminder that the stories we read in Scripture aren't fables. They are real events that took place in history. They happened in a time and in a place. And so as we look at these places, it just solidifies our commitment and our conviction of the truthfulness of Scripture. And archaeology has been a great science in just solidifying some of the great things in Scripture that we can investigate. So with that in mind, we're in Jerusalem. There are a lot of places we could have gone, I said, but we're running out of time in this one quarter. And we've got today, and then we've got next week, and that is going to be it. And so we're going to, last week we were in Jerusalem as we took a look at the place of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection that is today marked by what's called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a place that there's been a church since the 4th century, but the church that there is today is from the Crusader period, early 12th century. We talked about the archaeology behind that spot and why most scholars are convinced, and I am absolutely convinced that that is indeed the location of the crucifixion and the resurrection of Christ. So let's go to a couple of pools today. As we think about the life and the ministry of Christ, we think of pools. We think of two great episodes in the life of Christ. And so first of all, we're going to go to the pool of Bethesda. So let's kind of put it orient it in terms of its geography in terms of Jerusalem. And so you're looking kind of at a satellite view here. And let me show you, get an orientation of what you're looking at. You probably can see, of course, the Temple Mount. And so let me get my little drawing stick out here. And the Temple Mount, of course, is right here. And you can see this is the Dome of the Rock, the Islamic shrine, the 7th century Islamic shrine. So that gives a little perspective here. Right here is, this whole area here is the Mount of Olives. And of course, we think about Christ on the Mount of Olives. We think about the Garden of Gethsemane. Today, the Garden of Gethsemane, the kind of a traditional spot for it is right there. There's a church building there called the Church of All Nations. And there are some extremely old olive trees that date back centuries that go there. But there would have been olive trees all over the Mount of Olives. Gethsemane means the garden of the olive press. And so it was olive trees groves of olive trees were obviously very present on this location, even during the time of Christ. Now, where we're going today, so we come down usually, and anytime we're over there, this is the first spot we go to. It's a beautiful spot that overlooks the old city of Jerusalem, and then we follow this road down here, and we come to the Garden of Gethsemane, and then we eventually come up here. Here's the gates, of course, of the old city. Today, the east side of it, you've got the Kidron Valley, this valley right here, is the Kidron Valley. And there is a gate right here that is called the Lion's Gate in Jerusalem. And you go through the Lion's Gate. It was back in 67 that the Israelis, by the way, when they first breached the walls of Old Jerusalem and took Jerusalem in their in that war, they entered in through the Lion's Gate. So you go to the Lion's Gate, and you can just see all of the just packed with shells, bullet holes, and everything in that in those Crusader walls. But you go through it, and right when you go through the Lion's Gate, there is a complex that's right here, and that complex belongs to a French Catholic group, and that's called the Church of St. Anne's. And so this is where the Pool of Bethesda is. The Pool of Bethesda is right there. And so when we think about Jesus healing the man at the Pool of Bethesda, that's where it happened, just north of where the temple was, the Temple Mount. So let's just kind of move on here then. And again, this zeroes in just a little bit closer. And so let me show you. Again, here is the Church of St. Anne and the complex. Here is the Pool of Bethesda right there. This actually beside it, and you're going to see it in a minute, is the Church of St. Anne. And it's a pretty interesting and historical church building. And so that's where we're going to. And before we do that, though, let's go to this model. Sometimes when we go over there, we will go to the Israeli Museum. The Israeli Museum is one of the great museums anywhere. And one of the great sites at the Israeli Museum, I don't go there every time, and it's probably been a couple of trips since I've been there. I took a group there. I can't tell which group this is standing there, but they have this model of Jerusalem from 66 A.D., and so it is a spectacular model, and it's built out of Jerusalem stone. It is just quite stunning. And you can see with the group there, you can get a sense of the scale model. And it's really great as you're trying to get a perspective of Jerusalem during the time of Christ to walk around here and look at some of the things. You can see here, of course, you can see the Temple Mount here. And so right here is the west side of the city that the group is standing on. And this would have been Herod's palace right here. And by Jesus' day, of course, Herod was long gone. But this is the palace where Pilate would have been. And we will talk about that next week. I'm looking forward to next week. Some recent archaeological finds. I believe that the trial of Christ before Pilate took place right outside that wall. And I'm looking forward to talking about that. But you can see the Temple Mount over there across, and that would be the east side of it. So let's go then. We move over then to the north side of that model. You can see folks in the background again to get a sense of the scale of this model. This is a view of the model from the north side. Here is, this is on the northwestern corner, this complex here. It was called the Fortress of Antonio. You can see the temple there in the background on top of the Temple Mount. Well, here's what we're looking at. This is the Pool of Bethesda. It was just north, and it was at a location that was known as the Sheep Gate. Now, look here. You see this gate right there in the wall that would have led to the temple. We don't know why it was called the Sheep Gate. John mentions that. It was probably because the sacrificial sheep was brought to the temple because it's so closely related geographically to the temple entrance. One of the ways that you get onto the temple. And so probably, maybe, that's why it was called the Sheep Gate. And the Pool of Bethesda was by the Sheep Gate. And so you see the Pool of Bethesda there. Here's another angle looking down, of course, on the Temple Mount here and the temple proper itself right there. And right here is the Pool of Bethesda. You can see again there in the distance, that little gate there, that's the Sheep Gate. And so this kind of gives you a perspective, a geographical perspective of where these events, this great healing there at Bethesda took place. So this is Leon Rittmeyer, there we go, is just a famous architectural archaeologist, and he does all kinds of architectural drawings of these places based on the current archaeological evidence. And here is his drawing of the Pool of Bethesda, and it certainly seems to be right in every way, but based on John's description and based on the findings of archaeology there. It has his copyright on it because I wasn't going to buy it, so I just copied the image and put it there with his copyright on it, so we'll know who it belongs to. But what you see here actually is this was a Roman temple that was dedicated to the god of healing, the Roman god of healing, Asclepius, the snake god. You know, have you seen a doctor's insignia today has the snake around it? That's from the god Asclepius, the god of healing. And so that was a Roman temple that was there at one particular time. Of course, we know the story. The story is one of the most powerful stories in Scripture. John chapter 5 is where you'll find it recorded in verses 1 through 9. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there was in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades, and in these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Now, remember, here's Rittmeyer's again. John says it has 5 colonnades. And so what we're talking about is 2 pools with a dike in the middle. And so you've got, as we look at this, of course, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the 5 colonnades. And of course, we looked in as we looked at our picture in here, you can see again a north pool and a southern pool divided by a dike that is colonnaded. Okay, so we go back to this, and in that pool, around that pool, it says, lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. And so Jesus comes there. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years, and when Jesus saw him lying there, I knew that he'd already been there a long time. He said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" And so he comes to this man and he asks the question. And I think the question is important as we think about personal spiritual application. Jesus comes to heal, but we've got to want to be healed. And Jesus says, "Do you want to be healed?" Well, the man wanted to be healed. And so it says there, and before we get there, this is verses 5 and 6. Now, I want you to look at this. This is verse 1, 2, and 3. And then in the ESV and in a lot of versions, it jumps to verse 5. And you'll see that. You'll see there's no verse 4 in several modern translations like the ESV. And so let me say something about that. I've said it before at other times, but maybe some of you are here who haven't heard it before, or maybe you have forgotten about that. So after verse 3, this is the New American Standard. There's a portion of verse 3 that's not in the English Standard Version that is in the New American Standard. So after it says, this is the the ESV right here. In these, look at verse 3. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Then if you've got the New American Standard, it says, look at this. They were blind, lamed, and withered. And then you have this bracket. Do you see the bracket there, right here? You have a bracket here, and you have a bracket here. And you can see verse 4 here. Again, this is the New American Standard. And in this, it says, the bracket section says, this multitude is laying there. They were waiting for the moving of the waters. For an angel of the Lord went down at certain seasons into the pool, stirred up the water. Whoever then first, after the stirring up of the water, stepped in was made well from whatever disease with which he was afflicted. And so, again, you won't find that in most modern translations. What you will find in most modern translations is they'll have a footnote in verse 3, and they may have it at the bottom of the page in a footnote. Now, what we can say about this is most scholars believe, and I absolutely believe it as well, this is not a part, this section that's bracketed in the New American Standard is not a part of the original text. John didn't write this. The reason most scholars are convinced John didn't write this is in our oldest manuscripts of John, our oldest Greek manuscripts in existence, this section of the text is not there. This doesn't appear until much later in the text. And so we can be pretty sure then it wasn't an original part of John's gospel. Well, then how did it get in there? Well, sometimes as scribes are copying the text, sometimes they may make a marginal note. And you can understand a well-meaning scribe in this situation where John says they were all laying around the pool. And then then it's going to jump to the man and say, nobody was going to put me into the pool. And a well-meaning scribe would go, well, the readers wouldn't understand what's going on here. So let me just make a marginal note explaining why everybody was laying around this pool and the man wanted somebody to help him down into the pool. And so you can understand then why a well-meaning scribe would explain, because an angel stirred up the water periodically. And first in got healed. And somehow it eventually made its way into the text rather than a marginal note, and just then at a certain point then kind of was perpetually copied. As I said, most don't think it's authentic part of John's gospel. I don't think that it's a part of John's gospel either, because a couple of reasons. Number one, it's not in the oldest manuscripts from John. That's really strong evidence. If it's not in the earliest manuscripts, there's a real question mark over it. But second of all, that doesn't even sound like God. That God has this kind of game he plays with people at the Pool of Bethesda. And that at certain moments, he's going to send an angel, going to stir up the water a little bit. First in gets saved, everybody else, you're out of luck. And that doesn't seem to fit just the whole character of God throughout history. And so the big thing is it's not in early manuscripts, but also just the whole picture of what's going on, the healing game, if you will, that God plays. I don't think he plays that healing game. There's nothing to suggest that. And but obviously it was a place that from very early times was considered to be a place of healing. Again, you're going to see the Roman temple to Asclepius there early, that it was considered that. And you can understand how something like that would perpetuate, by the way. I mean, who's going to be the first in when an underground spring or something kind of bubbles the water? The healthiest person. Yeah, the healthiest is going to be there. It's not going to be someone who hasn't stood on his feet ever for 38 years. And so we have that marginal note. So I just wanted to say something about that particular marginal note. So if you have the New American Standard or a text like that and it has it, and you see these brackets and a footnote that explains it. By the way, there's the footnote. See the footnote, and then it says at the bottom of the New American Standard, early MSS, that's manuscripts, Greek manuscripts. Early manuscripts do not contain the remainder of verse 3 or verse 4. Okay, so Jesus says, do you want to get healed? And the sick man answered him, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am going, another steps down before me. And Jesus said to him, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And at once the man was healed. And he took up his bed and he walked. And that created some controversy and some things like that. So it's just one of the great moments in the life and the ministry of Christ. And as it generated a lot of questions about Christ. Now, as I said, this is where it took place. So you saw the kind of satellite views. Now let's get onto the ground. Let's get down here and take a look at it. What you're looking at here is the Church of St. Anne. That's the Church of St. Anne right there. And we're going to take a look at this. This is the remains of the Pool of Bethesda. It's kind of a mess. And as you get there, you got to kind of have someone to walk you through because it's hard to envision anything there. But first of all, the Church of St. Anne, that's a pretty interesting structure. It is actually the oldest intact Crusader church in Jerusalem, which means it's been there for like almost 900 years. It was the early 1100s that it was built by the Crusaders who came here after they retook Jerusalem from the Muslims after the Muslim conquest. And so they built several churches. Most of the churches that the Crusaders built were demolished later by the Muslims when they retook Jerusalem. But this one remained, and it's a beautiful church. There's the facade of it. You can see the French flag flying over top of it because, again, it is part of a French Catholic order. It belongs to today. But one of the interesting things about St. Anne's Church is the very unique and extraordinary acoustics in St. Anne's. When you go into St. Anne's, it's and this is what it looks like, and you will hear constantly. And when there's not a lot of people waiting, sometimes we can get in there and we sing a song, and it just sounds, 15 people sound like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir in there when they're really belting it. It's just fascinating. And so groups from all over the world, when they come in here, they do chanting, singing, things like that. So it's really an impressive thing. Well, why did this Crusader church, why was it the only one standing in Jerusalem after the Muslims retook Jerusalem? And the answer is because the Muslims used this. They made it into a madrasa, an Islamic school building. And so because they used it as an Islamic school building, it wasn't demolished. And so anyway, so it's St. Anne's, and it's on the grounds of St. Anne's, and beside St. Anne Church is the Pool of Bethesda. It's there, of course, the Crusaders built there to commemorate this location where this great miracle, John chapter 5, took place. How much of the pool is visible today? Well, that's all that's visible today. And even then, it's kind of hard to make it out. And you're going to see why here. So there's just a very small section of the southern pool. There's two pools. There's the northern pool and there's a southern pool. And it was separated by a dike. And that's kind of the layout. In front of the Church of St. Anne's here, you've got, there's a gated area in this huge courtyard here, just like waiting to be excavated. Whether it ever will be, who knows. But you can actually, there's some steps down in this corner, and you can actually go down there, and you can see the corner of that, the southeast corner of the, or the northeast corner rather of the southern pool there. So that gives a perspective. You've got here's that dike that separated the northern pool from the southern pool. And so it's really hard. Things have been built up. The ground level from the time of Christ is significantly below present ground level. And as the centuries went by and Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70, and then things were plowed up and over, and then they built on top of it. And as Hadrian destroyed it again in 135, and destroyed it, and things just built up. And what people would do is, when something would be destroyed, that would just kind of be leveled off and packed down, and you build something else on top of it. And so you have to kind of go down to find street level. We'll really see that next week when we're around the Temple Mount, and we'll see the road from the time of Jesus, and then where it was when they started excavating that, how far up it was till they got down to the Roman road. And so it was a big pool. There's a very, very small part that is visible today. This is why. Now, this kind of helps you understand what you're looking at when you go there. You see the northern pool, you see the southern pool there, of course, and you can see the dike through the middle. The northern pool was the first one built, and what these pools were, they were cisterns. They were water collection collection points. And as the rain, the seasonal rains would run off from the northern part of Jerusalem, north of here, it gets a little bit more hilly and drains down south. The northern pool would catch the water. And water would be used for not only the population, but it would be used for all of the temple and all of the temple activities. Water was necessary. Water was important. And so they had to collect water because the rainy season over there is very short. And so you channel everything that you can into cisterns in the ancient times. And so the northern pool was built first about 700 BC. And so we're talking about somewhere around Hezekiah's time. Later on, the southern pool would be built. The population of Jerusalem continues to get bigger. More water is necessary. And so the second pool was built. So what these pools really are in their original design were cisterns. And then you get to about 100 years before the time of Christ. And these pools had come to take on the healing significance, the understanding, the ideas that circulated around the area, and was that it was a place of healing. And so you can see from these green pools that have been excavated there, these date to about 100 BC. These were healing baths. People would come. And you know, there's people still today that are certain places in the world, these hot springs, and people would go to because they would supposedly have healing properties and for certain skin conditions or certain other things. And so long before the time of Christ, it started to have these healing properties. And then right here in front of the Church of St. Anne, you can see the Church of St. Anne right here. And right in front of the Church of St. Anne, remember that was that picture of that Roman temple that was built during the time of Hadrian. Remember Hadrian last week when we looked at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, he took the place where the Christians revered as the location of the empty tomb, and he built a pagan temple to Jupiter and Venus over top of it. And Hadrian built temples all around Jerusalem when the Jews were driven out in 135 and expelled from Jerusalem, and he renamed it Aelia Capitolina and made it into a Roman colony. And so he built these temples, and he built one here by the Pool of Bethesda. And again, it's to the god Asclepius, the god of healing. Then what happened at about 400 A.D., the Byzantines, and we've seen at a lot of sites around the 4th century, as Byzantine, Constantine's mom came into the picture, and wanted to know all the places in the Holy Land where significant events took place, and she was shown the memory of early Christians and generations of Christians. And so they would build buildings to commemorate these sites. And so what you see here is there's the remains, and right here's the outline, the orange with the apse there, that semicircular. That was the Byzantine church that was built right across the dike, kind of straddled the northern pool and the southern pool. And what you'll see today, a lot of these big foundation piers that go down in it, those are the support piers for this Byzantine church that was built. Well, the Muslims came along, of course, in the 7th century and 8th century, and they destroyed the Byzantine church. Well, then when the Crusaders retook Jerusalem in the 1100s, they rebuilt a church there, and you can see the outline of that church right here. A small Crusader chapel that was built, again, on the dike between the northern pool and the southern pool. And then the Crusaders also built the Church of St. Anne. After they put that chapel up a few years later, they built the Church of St. Anne. And so that's kind of where the archaeology stacks up here at the Pool of Bethesda. And here you can see in the green area where the only part that's visible today. So if you go there and you're looking for this 5-colonnaded Pool of Bethesda, you're like going, where in the world is it? Yeah, well, it's there, but you can only see just a little section of it that has been excavated Whether any more will be excavated through the years, we don't know, but it is nevertheless, we know, is the spot. So let's take a look at it here. Real quickly, this is the area. This part right here was the part where the healing baths, the early healing baths before the time of Christ, you'll find right in front of the pool. This is where the Roman temple would have been, of course. This again is the visible area. Now, with that said, let's kind of move on to this. There's some of the early remains of some of those we don't have time to really point out some of those parts of the Byzantine church and some of the parts of the healing pools that were built before the time of Christ. But here you get a picture right here. Here's the Byzantine basilica where it would have been laid over the pool of Bethesda. And you can see here again how it straddles the dike. This is the dike separating the southern pool from the northern pool. You can see these columns, these big piers here. Those were, as I said, those were the supports of the Byzantine church back in about the beginning of the 4th century. The Crusader Chapel would have been right there. There's more remains of that Crusader Chapel. Of course, it's built on the dike. You can see the Crusader Chapel right here. Take a look at it. You can see it standing right there, the remains of it. The first chapel they built before they built, of course, the Church of St. Anne right there. When you're standing up by St. Anne's and you're looking down, you can see here is the Crusader Chapel. What's left of the Crusader Chapel right there. This is a spot where I'm standing on the other side. You can see the Church of St. Anne, and of course, this is the Crusader Chapel right here, the remains of it. There, of course, you can see it. That is underneath. That was the crypt of the Crusaders' Chapel. That's looking up from the crypt at where the apse of the Crusader Chapel would have been. Okay, so let's come over here now to this spot. If you really want to see what you can of the Pool of Bethesda today, you kind of go to that spot right there, and you look down right in there. And so, as they have excavated, and you can see here many of the, again, you can see the piers here of the Byzantine church from the 4th century. And again, you see the Crusader Chapel here and a lot of the remains from the Byzantine church. And like I said, it's just kind of as you're looking at it, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's just kind of all a mess there. But as you're looking down here, you go down to about right here, and bedrock starts about right there. This is where the cistern was dug. And so the Pool of Bethesda, it started to be dug right there. And the bedrock really goes around to this point, and it curves around. This is the corner of where the Pool of Bethesda would be. And if you look back, you're looking down into it now. And you're looking back here, and you can see these steps, hopefully, over there. As you're looking down to the very bottom, and you see up on that end, these steps, those are some of the ancient steps of the Pool of Bethesda. And so this is the only section of the Pool of Bethesda that we can see, but it's great that they have excavated down that far in the past, and so we can say with certainty this is where that great miracle of Jesus took place north of the Temple Mount. Well, let's take a look real quickly. We got about 10 minutes, so let's whip through this super quick. So as we look at this shot, again, kind of a satellite view, we're looking at the Pool of Bethesda up here. Now we're going to go down here, and we're going to go to the opposite end of Jerusalem. We're going to go to the southern end, and that's where the Pool of Siloam is. Here it is. As you look at it now, you're standing south of Jerusalem, and you're looking up. You can see the Temple Mount here in the background. This is Jerusalem during David's day. That's it. That's what Jerusalem was when David conquered Jerusalem and made it the capital of Israel. And we're looking at this patch right here. This is where the Pool of Siloam is. And we're going to talk a little bit about a tunnel that originates right there. There's a spring approximately right there that has been flowing for at least 2,700 years, bringing water into Jerusalem, called the Gihon Spring. And so we're going to look at that as we take a look at the Pool of Bethesda. Looking down on that spot right here as an aerial view, you can see here. Can you see the steps? You can see the steps. It's like 4 steps, flat area, 4 steps. Super interesting story behind the discovery of this place. And by the way, look at all the grass and all in front of that, the wooded area. That'll take on significance in just a second. Here's that Hezekiah's tunnel from the spring. Hezekiah, of course, the story of Hezekiah's tunnel is told. You can see the Pool of Siloam down there. Hezekiah's tunnel was about 18 feet, carved through bedrock, one of the most amazing archaeological finds ever, one of the greatest archaeological, or one of the greatest engineering feats ever. It was done Hezekiah as the Assyrians were coming to attack Jerusalem. He wanted to protect the water source of the Gihon Spring. If a siege surrounded them and the Assyrians had access to the water, it could spell the end of Jerusalem. So you protected your water source. He brought it in. 2 teams digging from each end. Even today, the greatest engineers among us and all the scientific stuff that we have and instruments, they have no clue how they were able to. There's no orientation when you're under bedrock and you're chipping through with axes or picks, and how they finally were able to meet up as they started from 2 different ends. The water is flowing today. You can see Leola's feet in the water there. It is still one of my favorite things to do at any time, but especially in the summer, because the water is so cold and it is so chilly. And in the winter season, it's a little higher, up to your shins maybe, but usually in the summer, it flows about ankle depth. And you go through it, and it's one of the greatest treats if you don't have claustrophobia. But if you do, you don't have to go through it. Most people go through it, and it is wonderful. We read about it in 2 Kings chapter 20, the rest of the deeds of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made the pool and the conduit and brought water into the city. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles? So this is what I was talking about. In 2 Chronicles 32, this same Hezekiah closed the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon and directed them down to the west side of the city of David, as Hezekiah prospered in all of his works. And so as we think about the Pool of Siloam, this is the source of the Pool of Siloam. Again, we're looking down there at this particular spot right here where the Pool of Siloam was. And so let's zoom in on it again. There are the steps that were uncovered. This was discovered in 2004. One of the great stories. You see this particular pipe right here. That's a water pipe. And can you see up here, there's a little door. And that door is like, if you open that, watch out, that first step is Lulu, because it's this plummet. What is a door doing up there? Well, before those steps were uncovered, that was the level of the street. And in 2004, they had a water pipe problem. And so they excavated the water pipe to fix the problem. But of course, it's Jerusalem, and so you can't do anything, even fix a water pipe, without first calling in the Israeli Antiquities Authority to do some probes, archaeological probes. And as they probed, they found these steps. And so they were like, okay, let's start going down and finding it. And so that's what they did. They dug down. There's some of the early excavations as they started to expose the steps. Anytime in Jewish context and in a Jewish setting, when you find something like this steps, this number of steps and the form of the steps, 4 flat, 4, it is about ritual bathing generally. And so they found this, and so they found the Pool of Siloam. There it is. You can see after a lot had been excavated at this point of the steps, but also look at the how far gone down. There's the earth that's still there as they uncovered the steps there. This was a long time ago. I think this was in, I see Chandler Montgomery. That was in 2016. You can see behind us that it's still socked in. All that's found there are the steps. There's Kevin and Chandler. You can see here on the side. Again, this is just that field that you see, and you see nothing there but steps. Now, the interesting thing you're going to see, quite a contrast here in a second. So as you keep coming back, it keeps me in develop. Now, here's what you see. In 2023, they finally were able to get access to that land. and that begin excavating. And so you can see now all of that's gone up through here, and excavations are now taking place there. And for the last couple of years, the excavation has absolutely been in earnest, and that is an understatement. You can see there, you can see the steps, you can see the excavations that are going on. One of the things they were surprised at, they thought they would find those steps extended all around and find the entire pool, but they didn't, and they're like going, what's going on here? And so they kept digging. There is one of the delicate archaeological tools called a front end loader, and that is for less delicate areas. So you can see again what they've been doing and the progress that has been made. Take a look here. This is the corner when in 2016 that they're standing beside, and you can see how dramatically different it was then from 2016 to like 2023, 24. This is what it looks like now. You can see the development out in front of the steps. But what was significant was last year, what they discovered is, I'll tell you, before we do that, let's think about the significance of what happened here. Another one of the great miracles of Jesus, John 9, of course. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not this man that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is not day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And that's a significant statement, one of Jesus' I am statements. And everything that Jesus does has a purpose, all these miracles. This one, I'm the light of the world. And he brings light to this man. Having said these things, he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, anointed the man's eyes with the mud, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. And so he went and washed, John says, and he came back seeing. And so as we think about all the imagery there that's really important, Jesus is called the sent one. Go wash in the place called sent, which is what Siloam is. And if we want to have our sight, our spiritual sight restored, that we can see things spiritually clearly, we've got to be washed in the one who was sent. And so there's real significance there. It's one of the great, great miracles, and that's the location. Now, what they found, as I said, they were a little perplexed. Well, where's the rest of the pool? Instead, what they found, and it was published last year, the fall of last year, and it's really exciting. I can't wait to see this. They found the largest dam ever built in ancient Israel, right there. The Pool of Siloam is over this dam, and it's about 26 feet thick. It's about 46 feet long, but that's only the part that's uncovered. It goes much longer than that. And it's just an enormous, enormous structure. And the interesting thing is, they thought maybe it was Hezekiah who built this, but I will tell you this, what they discovered by doing some radiocarbon dating on some of the straw and all that was in the upper layers of the mortar of this, they were able to get down, they did separate datings, multiple datings, and they all came back to within a 10-year window. And that is extremely rare. And so this was actually built before Hezekiah, about 100 years before Hezekiah, during not that quite that long, but during the 8 days of Joash, the king of Judah. And so it shows, first of all, that a lot of people, a lot of scholars were Bible skeptics thought Jerusalem was such a cow town back in those days. They didn't have the expertise or anything, technological expertise to do anything like that. That takes big kingdoms. And now those biblical minimalists can't argue that. To pull off civil engineering feats like this takes a lot of money and a lot of know-how. And so this dam, this reservoir that was built there for water in Jerusalem on the south side was then later going to be developed by Herod in Herod's time, Herod the Great, just before Jesus, in building this pool called the Pool of Siloam. That would be important as pilgrims went to, real quick, give me one more minute unless you got to go. The pool's down here. You can see it in the south, and there's a road a first century Roman road that went up to the temple. It was discovered. It's been being excavated underground because of neighborhoods on top of it, meticulously excavated for the last 20 years plus. It is now open. The 26th of last month, it is open. It's been open for like 3 weeks. And so what the worshipers would do, they would be washing the Pool of Siloam, and they would travel that road up there. You can see this is the entry from the Pool of Siloam right here, how you get to that. And you go in there. Leola got a little sneak peek last year, or the last time we were there. You couldn't go very far, but there's stalls inside where the shopkeepers were. You can see the stepped street from the times of Jesus. She was able to go up to here with our guide that had the iron door that kept people out as they were still excavating. But it is now open, and you can walk the entire road that Jesus would have walked, the apostles would have walked, all the worshipers would have walked as they made their way from the Pool of Siloam up to the Temple Mount. Okay, so many wonderful things associated with the life of Christ from an archaeological perspective. We'll finish it next week when we go back to take a look at where Jesus underwent his trial. Thanks for being here. Hope you have a great rest of the day. Lord willing, I'll see you tonight at 6.